You name it, and my guest today can claim it. Dr. Chris Jones, current Democratic nominee for governor of Arkansas, is a nuclear physicist, doctor with a PhD in urban planning, father of 3, entrepreneur, ordained minister, and husband to an Air Force combat veteran, Dr. Geraldine Jones. But one thing he is not is a politician. Born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, raised by a school teacher, this young man dreamed of being an astronaut. As luck would have it, deafness in one ear would keep him from that part of his dream, but not all of it. On a NASA scholarship, young Chris went to Morehouse College for science and math, MIT for a master's in nuclear engineering, another master's in technology and policy, and last, a PhD in urban planning. Dr. Jones has returned home to raise his family and give back to his home state of Arkansas. It was 2018 when he became the executive director of the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub, a division of Winrock whose mission is to build businesses and create jobs while protecting the environment. Chris calls the Innovation Hub's Arkansas clients makers, artists, and entrepreneurs. And on top of it all, like the brilliant past Governor Bill Clinton, Dr. Jones is both super smart and a great communicator, as you will hear today. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the table the well-rounded, smart, personable, and ambitious candidate for governor of Arkansas, Dr. Chris Jones.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. All right,
So good to be here.
Thank you. All right, the first and most obvious question.
Obvious question?
Why in the world, with all that education, would you want to go to be a governor when in the private sector you could make more money, work less hard? Why?
Yeah.
Why? How did that come to be? Did somebody come to you and just yank your chain? Or, I mean, what happened?
Well, look, first off, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
It's great to be a part of this conversation. And I'll say Arkansas is worth it. At the end of the day, Arkansas is worth it. I'm a 7th generation Arkansan. And so when I think about my life's journey, none of it would have been possible without Arkansas. And so I want to give back to the place that gave so much to me. And really, it was a chance encounter that planted the seed for me even being here today and doing this. And that was my dad brought me from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He sold insurance, and he would often ride me around with him when he was out. We were in a Volkswagen Beetle that had a hole in the bottom because, they didn't.
Why did all those old boats? They all did. My boyfriend's had a hole in the bottom. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's pretty common. Mm-hmm. And we got to the mall up here in Little Rock and bumped into none other than then Governor Bill Clinton. And I was fascinated by that encounter because he listened, he cared, and he was engaging. And so after I asked my dad, I said, well, Dad, what does he do? And my dad said, he's a governor. I said, but what's the governor do? And he said, go look it up. Because back then, we didn't have Google, we didn't have cell phones, so we had to go home to the Encyclopedia Britannica. And when I pulled out G, I found out that a governor could solve problems and could make a difference in people's lives. And so it was really about the public service aspect. And then at 8, I said, I want to come back one day and serve my state.
How old were you?
I was 8 years old. And
have you met Bill? I'm sorry, what?
Oh, go ahead.
Have you met Bill Clinton and told him that?
I have.
What did he say?
Well, he was almost in tears.
Yeah, that's so him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was, and the conversation was really about how we make Arkansas better.
How long ago was that conversation?
Probably 4 months ago.
Recent?
Yeah.
Was he did you go up there or was he down here?
He was here.
Yeah, I guess you'd already signed up to be the governor.
I'd already.
Signed up to run to be the governor. You're already a nominee, right?
I'm already in it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you got to meet him and you got to tell him that story. Well, doesn't everybody in life wish that somebody would say something like that to them, that they matter and that they make a difference?
Well, that's why I'm out and in every county and talking to folks, because you'd be surprised. And actually, you wouldn't be surprised, because if you talk to people and you ask them what made a difference in their lives, they'll often go back to an encounter they had with someone. And so it's important to be mindful of the encounters we have with people, because they can literally shape the trajectory of folks' lives.
That's why teachers are important.
Teachers are critical. And my mom's a lifelong educator. Everyone who made the most impact on your life, nine times out of 10, you'll say a teacher.
Or your parents.
Or your parents.
As a young boy growing up in Pine Bluff, you wanted to be an astronaut. Tell us about
did.
that dream.
Well, I loved science. I loved exploring. I loved looking at space because we lived out where you could see the stars. And also when I was 8, something interesting happened that year. That was the year of the Challenger accident. That was the year when everyone was paying attention because Krista McCullough was going to be the teacher in space. And so there was a whole curriculum around science and NASA and space. And between Krista McCullough and Ron McNair. So Ron McNair, African-American male. So I saw someone who looked like me.
And he was going on the shuttle.
He was on the shuttle.
With the teacher. Mm-hmm.
He's a North Carolina A&T graduate, and he went to MIT.
Oh.
So studying that and learning that, when I had that experience and saw the explosion, it made me feel like I wanted to be a part of making it right and going again.
It seems like it would make you scared.
It seemed like it would, but it didn't. It inspired me to say, how do we fix it? How do we solve the problem, and how do we continue to explore?
So your brain at 8 years old, that was a big year for you. 8, you met
huge.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
8, you saw the Space Shuttle Challenger blow up.
8 was big.
8 was a big year. So what's your father do?
My father, he worked on Cotton Belt for a while, but then he sold insurance for most of my life. And he's a pastor.
And your grandfather?
My grandfather. So my family, like I said, has been in Arkansas for over 200 years. And my mother's father, who's from the Stevens area, Jesse Torrance, and he had a 3rd grade education, and he drove a truck. He was a truck driver all my life. He had actually, when he was putting steel on the truck fell and cut off 2 of his fingers. So he was a strong man and was a quiet man, but he also had a big impact on my life because he's the one that told me when I was sitting in his truck bed, he said, big man, get an education because when you get it in your head, no one can take it out. Now this man had a 3rd grade education.
It's a lot of wisdom
A lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
Interestingly, he and his brothers, he had one sister, Darlene Torrance. He and his brothers all sacrificed their education to make sure she could go to school. And she was one of the first African-American graduates of the University of Arkansas after she went to Philander.
Lovely.
Yeah. They made the sacrifice. And he was saying education is worth it.
And she's a woman.
Out.
They gave the sacrifice to a woman, which is even more interesting.
There it is. Exactly.
She must have felt like she was the most bookish of all of them.
Well, that was part of it, but they also took care of her, and she was an educator herself. So
she became a teacher.
She became a teacher.
You've got a lot of teachers in your family.
A lot of teachers in your family.
So your family can be traced back to 1819.
Yeah, before 1819.
Before what? All in Arkansas.
All in Arkansas. They were slaves. Because I actually carry around sometimes a few things in my pocket. One of them is a copy of the census record from pre-1960s, and it's just an age and a dash. So I've traced my family back to the Foster Plantation. That's
Where was that one?
In South Arkansas, Ouachita County.
You're lucky you can trace it back that far. I watch Finding Your Roots, and they can't find a lot of African-American history.
Interestingly, one branch of my family actually traces back to the O'Gwens that are from Ireland.
Oh. Fun.
Yeah.
Is that Black Irish? Does that make you Black Irish?
That makes me Black Irish.
That's cool.
Yeah. So Letty O'Gwen was my 6th great-grandmother who was living in a house, and you look at the census records and you see where her father was born. Her father was born in Ireland.
How did they, do you know how they got to the United States?
I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure it out. So if someone listening knows, let me know.
There you go. So how does a boy from Pine Bluff on food stamps, we haven't even mentioned that, end up at MIT, and you call it an X factor? What is the X factor that got you?
Yeah.
Is it because a lot of times when I interview people that do really well in education and go far to get a lot of degrees, it's because their mother was a school teacher. A lot of times
that's a good point.
I've seen that. So what is your X factor? How did you end up with a NASA scholarship and at Morehouse College for math and science?
Yeah. I think it's a few things that make up that X factor. One of it is just God. God gave me the resources, gave me the opportunity, and put me in places that I really statistically should not have been. So in other words, though I grew up in Pine Bluff, you look at the statistics of Pine Bluff and you think it's nothing. It's devastation. It's poverty. It's crime. And yet I was able to do research at the National Center for Toxicological Research. I was able to do research in high school at UAPB, University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And so those experiences exposed me to so many things. And I think that's the second part of the X factor, exposure. Being exposed at an early age to the range of possibilities made a huge difference. I think the third part of the X factor is being surrounded by folks who believed in me. Not because of what I did, but because of who I am. And that was the community that was surrounding me. And then lastly, knowing that I had to work hard, because if I didn't work hard, then others will be depending upon the outcome.
Oh, guilt.
A little bit.
That was my motivator. I didn't want my mother to have to buy anything for me because I knew she would have to do without.
Exactly. And they would quickly do without.
Oh, absolutely. Mother would not get a new coat so that I could have a new coat.
So you work hard. And
Guilt.
you want to carry your weight.
You want to carry your weight.
You want to carry your weight. So
I don't know how you instill that in people, though. I don't know how come I had that. I mean, I don't know. So you're an ordained minister, and your father was a minister?
My father is a minister, and my mother's a minister.
Oh, wait, teachers, ministers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us what denomination.
Well, we grew up missionary Baptist, so I went to Cherokee Street Missionary Baptist Church growing up. But we also went to Pentecostal churches. We went to AME churches. So we had the full range and what I learned through that experience is that it's really about where are you getting the real teaching of the Word of God. Doesn't matter what denomination it is. But when you study and you explore and you listen and you unpack, does it align with the Word of God? If it does, then I don't care what denomination it is.
What is the Word of God?
What is the Word? Ooh,
is there something?
Are we getting
what is the Word
question?
of? What is that? Is it a sentence or is it a word? Or is it a lifestyle?
It's a lifestyle. We live it out.
Yeah.
We should live it out.
Yeah.
So when I go out now, one of the things I say is that, because I believe this, the second most important commandment in the Bible that I read is love thy neighbor as thyself. So I don't need to know you to love you. It doesn't say love your neighbor if you know them, if you have a relationship with them.
If you agree with them.
If you agree with them. So whatever party you're in, whatever your background, you're my neighbor, and I love you. Now, love is an action word. So I have to show that I love you, and love is not a soft thing. It doesn't mean you get to run over me.
Oh.
It doesn't. But it does mean that I'm showing up for you in your time of need, and I'm being there with you on the journey.
I had Sister Deborah in last week, and I asked her, how can religious people, Christians, Muslims, everyone, they all have a common theme, love thy neighbor, Jews, everybody. And how can some of these radicalized believers hate other people?
Yeah, it's a perversion of the word. It's a perversion of the words. It's a perversion of the faith, right? So I expect us to be imperfect, because we are. So it doesn't shake my faith when I see that folks who claim they have the same faith are perverting it. It just means they're imperfect and they're perverting it. It doesn't mean that the word is bad.
And you're not allowed to hate them for it.
And you shouldn't hate them.
No, you should pray for them.
And love them.
And love them and hope that they can get over what it is that's eating at them, So how do you align science and religion? That's the one.
Yeah. Well, you saw my launch video.
Yes, the time.
For me, it's about time and this idea that there isn't a conflict between the two, because they're two different things. Religion and my faith tell me why. My science tells me how. It's two different things. Religion is about the existential question, and the science is unpacking that existential question.
What's existential mean?
Existing. Like, why do we exist? How do we exist, in a sense? But not the what. if you would. So let me explain it a different way. I'm a scientist.
Okay.
So I want to see atoms and particles and molecules, and I think about them. As a minister, the question is, why do they exist? So my human body, my nature, myself, I exist for a purpose. That's what the religion tells me. Here's my purpose. How my arms move and everything, that's the science part of it.
I mean, we couldn't, so I think what I hear you saying is we couldn't exist without the science. No, we couldn't. The science couldn't exist without God. Yeah. God even created the science. Yeah. Is that what you're kind of saying? Yeah. I think I'm getting it.
You got it. But you had it all along.
I don't know. You're like the third or fourth preacher guy I've had on to say, come on, explain it to me one more time. Slowly getting in there. How did you meet your wife? Dr. Geraldine Jones, my God, this woman is amazing. A rock star. She's an ER doctor. What hospital?
UAMS.
Ooh. She was an ER doctor on the front lines in Afghanistan.
On the front lines in
Tell us how you met her. Tell us a little bit about her.
So she is amazing.
God,
so not only is she beautiful, she's brilliant. She's funny. And in December, we would have been married. We will be married 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. So she's been my partner for that whole time. We met in church. We were both in Boston. I was there for grad school, and she was there for medical school. And we were, so the thing is, physicians tend to get up early. Engineers tend to stay up late and get up late.
Really?
Yeah. So engineers will work through the night. Physicians are up early and on it. So she and her friends were coming from early service at church, the 8 a.m. service. And me and my engineer friends were coming to the second service, like the 11 a.m. service. And we passed each other. And it was a crowd. We bumped into each other, and we got to know each other. And then 2 weeks later, we saw each other at an event. And we just locked in and fell in love and talked till like 4 a.m. that morning. So my wife, Dr. Geraldine Jones, not only is she an ER doc, she's also the state medical director for disaster preparedness.
Really?
Right. So she was helping lead us through COVID, while she was also working nights in the hospital. And then for about 2 weeks straight, she worked 7 days a week nonstop because she's committed, because she cares, and because she wants to use all of her gifts to serve others. She also teaches the exercise class.
What a machine.
I
love her.
I would never take her class, by the way.
You wouldn't?
I would never take her class. It's too hard. It's too hard. It's too hard. It's
I just
fun,
thought you didn't want her telling you what to do.
Well, that too, but it's just too hard. Look, she did serve in Afghanistan, and this weekend is 9/11.
Sure is. I didn't realize. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And that was the impetus, the sort of the catalyst, the reason for the war and why she was over there in the first place. You'll find this interesting, since Flag and Banner is your company. One of the most fascinating things I remember about her being over there was that she took the time to take 2 flags and fly them, and she brought one back for my dad, and she brought one back for her dad. Her dad is also an Air Force veteran, but he didn't serve in combat. So she served in combat, he didn't, and they have them displayed at the house.
2 flags that flew in Afghanistan. That's cool. 2 flags that flew in Afghanistan.
That's cool. And I'll tell you this, she also, it just keeps going.
Yeah.
She's a first responder as well. So she ran a EMS system, and you heard of the Boston Marathon?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Boston Marathon bombing?
No, she wasn't there.
She was working at the finish line.
Oh, that's terrifying.
She was working the finish line.
They were lucky.
And look, we lived about 1.5 miles away from it, so I heard the bomb go off. And I saw it on TV, and I immediately started calling her. It took an hour to get to her, and as soon as I got through, I was like, you need to come home right now, you need to come home. She said, hold on. No, I don't. I'm exactly where I need to be, and I need to get off this phone.
Oh, I love her already.
I'm going to cry over that. I love her.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I mean, God had her in the perfect place. Those
place.
people were so lucky to have her. I mean, she knows how to do that war-type crisis ER.
And now she's here serving Arkansas.
Where's she from?
She's from Alabama, born and raised in Alabama. She went to, she wasn't born there. She was raised there because her dad's military. She was raised in Montgomery, Alabama. She went to Howard in D.C. For undergrad in biology, and then Harvard Med School.
Where's her parents live?
Her parents now live in Maryland. They were in Alabama.
Does her mother mad at you for taking her child away?
Well, and we have the 3 daughters too, so they're
they're
not
really
excited.
mad at you,
They're
like
not
4
happy.
times
They're
mad
not
at
happy,
you.
but they're coming to visit. They're
Well,
just
can they move here?
I want them to.
So let's
And
tell
I
you.
got to tell you one more thing about my wife.
Okay. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, because she's amazing.
Yeah, she
and,
is.
And for me, sometimes God has to make things very clear for me. He made it very clear. Her maiden name is Jones.
Oh.
And, yeah. And
You all have the same last name?
Same last name. And guess what
So
else?
Dr. Joneses don't have to change their name?
She did not have to change her name.
Okay, what?
And we have the same birthday.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I'm 1 year older.
Are you sure? Well,
What day did you get married
Don't
on?
worry, we checked. We
Okay,
did the
good.
we did the background
Uh-huh.
check.
Did
You're
the
not
whole-
twins.
I was about to
Family-
say.
we did the
I was like, I
family
shouldn't
over
ask if you're twins.
No, but we should ask if we're related. And so we checked. But
you
no,
did? That's funny.
I totally checked. I'm like, I'm in love with this woman.
Was there an event that made you think I need to move back? You're living in Boston. You've got a great life going on. How many girls do you have by now?
2.
And
the
you-
third one we had in Maryland, and then we came back here.
What was there something that happened that made you decide to move home to Arkansas?
No, I've always wanted to come home.
You
And
always
so
knew.
my pathway was to get my PhD. Now, originally I wanted to go to Morehouse, go to MIT, and by the way, I only applied to Morehouse for undergrad, and I only applied to MIT for grad school.
What does that mean? What
You
do
knew you knew you wanted to go.
I did not apply to any other schools.
Oh, that was it.
That was it.
Wow. Okay. Well, you're lucky. I guess you're lucky you got in. I don't know.
it was a
Another
blessing.
one of those God things.
God
You're like,
things,
that's where I'm going,
that's
and
what-
I know
let's do
it.
Let's
Okay.
do it. And so, I bring that up to say I wanted to finish my PhD, become an astronaut, and come back home.
You always knew.
I always wanted to come back home. So that was always a part of it. So I couldn't become an astronaut because I can't hear it. I'm my right ear, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The year after I graduated and walked across the stage with my PhD, I was back on the ground here. And the thing about it is, I never left Arkansas. I visited 3 or 4 times a year, always. My girls came here in the summertime. So it was going to get my education, but it was never leaving Arkansas. So it wasn't a hard move back at all.
You know, everybody talks about people leaving Arkansas all the time. My son that you met is in for he's getting his PhD, be graduating in December, and we're trying to get him back because we
Come on back.
keep losing smart people to other
Yeah,
states.
we got to get them back.
Was your first job back the Innovation Hub?
My first job here was the Innovation Hub. Now, interestingly, my wife came back, and UAMS was what drew her in. They recruited her. They wanted her. She was working in Maryland, and then they brought her here.
So there kind of was something like they reached
There
out to
was,
her
there
before you
was.
had even.
So we knew we wanted to come back. The question was when we would come back.
And then they reach out to her.
And they reach out to her. And, interestingly, while working and doing things in Boston and helping the communities there was always this question of, why am I using my talents in a place that's not home?
Yeah.
Because the second thing my grandfather would always tell me was use every gift God gave you to help someone else and do it at home.
And do it at home.
And do it at home. Because he cared about, he did that for his sister.
Yep.
He was always there for my mother. My mother was the only child. And she was the only child not because the story is my grandmother got pregnant maybe like 11 times.
Oh, she kept losing
Most
them.
of them were stillbirths or miscarriages. And so my mother was the only one that survived.
She's special.
She is very special. And I'm going to talk about healthcare in a second about why that matters for her. But, so looking at all the great things that are happening, and I'm looking around, and there are plenty of PhDs, and there are plenty of folks who know how to fix infrastructure and do economic development. But then I look back at home, and we were continually falling behind in education, continually falling behind in health and infrastructure and workforce development. And it was a burning that said, you got to get back to do something on the ground in a place that has always been in your blood.
And so you came back to the Innovation Hub.
Came back to Innovation Hub, which is an amazing place. I love it.
Are you still there?
No, I left in April so I can. This is a full-time job.
Yeah, right.
It's 24/7. It's a lot of work, and it's worth it. but I knew I couldn't do anything else.
Windrock Foundation does a lot of great stuff. I interviewed Arlo Washington from the People's Trust Loan Fund, and I was shocked at
His
how much.
His story is amazing.
Yeah, he's a great guy too. I was shocked at how Windrock's Foundation is so important.
Yeah. Not only here, across the globe.
Yes, internationally.
They do work internationally, and they're grounded in Arkansas, and they do a lot of work in South Arkansas.
And Sybil Hampton works for them.
Yes,
so
exactly.
many important jobs are done by the Windrock Foundation, which I went on and read their mission statement, which says is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to increase economic opportunity, sustain natural resources, and protect the environment. Based in Little Rock, Arkansas and Washington, D.C., Windrock is named for Winthrop Rockefeller, who served as the 37th governor of Arkansas.
And his story and his governorship, Governor Winthrop Rockefeller, is a fascinating one. Because, here he is in Arkansas from New York in a heavily Democratic environment. And he runs as a Republican.
Yeah, and he gets elected.
He's a Republican. He gets elected, and he's talking about how do we lift up all Arkansans. No matter what your party affiliation, no matter where you live, how do we lift up the Delta? How do we bring education to everyone? And I've read multiple ones of his books, and I'm inspired by his life story and what he focused on.
I am too, and he drank too much.
Well,
he was completely broken, which is what I love about him too.
He was a character.
I told you I love alcoholics.
You did say that.
He was a character. He made no
human.
excuses. He
None.
was very human, and he was
he
very
worked hard.
compassionate, and he worked hard. Yeah, he's a fascinating guy. A lot of people think he is the favorite governor. I've talked to a lot of people who say he's my favorite governor.
I've heard that a lot too.
Is this true?
Uh-oh.
Does Arkansas have a $1 billion surplus?
That is not true. It's $1.6 billion.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I was shocked.
$1.6 billion.
And we're fighting about
How to use it.
how to use it?
How to pay teachers.
How to pay teachers?
We have teachers that are literally on food stamps.
Yes, your mother was a teacher on food stamps.
So what are we doing?
What are we doing? We just talked about how important teachers are.
What are we doing? Infrastructure. Diamond City, Arkansas. Their water.
There's a Diamond City?
There's a Diamond City. It's pretty cool. You should go check it out.
Okay.
I was speaking with the sheriff there, and we were talking about their water and sewer system. It's 3 to 5 years away from failing. If that happens, it's going to run off into the Arkansas River. We're the natural state.
Yeah.
So imagine if all of that ran off into the Arkansas River. You think what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi is bad, where they can't drink their water, they can't use their water?
Which, by the way, has been going on since the 80s. They've known and did nothing, exactly like what you're talking about. We know Diamond City.
We know.
What is up with that? Why is it all about? Son Jack and I were talking last night because he got in an airport late, got on his airplane late, and we were talking last night, and he said it's all about a quick fix and feeling good right at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not about
solving the real problem.
Yeah.
Look, I worked at NASA, and we put a man on the moon, and about to put a woman on the moon, and put a rover on Mars. So it's not like we can't do the tough stuff. Mm-hmm. We can do the tough stuff. The question is, do we have the will to do the tough stuff?
Right.
And do we have leaders who have the will to do the tough stuff and say, no, this isn't about my title. This isn't about making a few people feel good. This is about how do we fix things for all of Arkansas.
It seems to me that most politicians today are about publicity.
Well,
what can I say to get me on the front page of the paper?
It's the system is designed to incentivize certain things, right? Mm-hmm. So how do I keep the position? By being on the front page, by being out there.
And you can't blame them, because humans vote on the person who has the biggest followers on, the social media thing. Name recognition, it's all about that. Most people don't want to do the research. They just want to go, oh, I know that name.
Well, I'd say this, because having traveled the state, hit all 75 counties, I'm going to Russellville today. I was in Batesville yesterday. I was in Stamps yesterday also. And for those who don't know, Stamps is in South Arkansas, almost in the Louisiana border, and Batesville is in North Central Arkansas.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but what's consistent is that people are busy. Mm-hmm. They're busy trying to make sure their kids are safe and okay. They're busy trying to make sure they can keep a roof over their head. They're busy trying to get their car fixed because they're driving over roads that are messing up their tires. And they're just busy with life. And there's no space to do the kind of political research that we want them to do.
Yeah.
Right? So because their life cycle doesn't allow that. And historically what they found is no matter how I vote, my road still doesn't get paved. No matter how I vote, my school still gets closed. So they aren't seeing changes, which means why would I invest in something that I'm not getting a return on?
I think that is the deal. I ask people all the time, did you vote? No, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
But it does.
It does make a
It does.
difference.
And so we're telling folks that, and they're listening and they're hearing it, and they're waking up in places that they hadn't woken up before, and they're realizing that actually, no, in this election, in this time, in this moment, my vote is my voice. And there's an opportunity to have a seat at the table to actually change things.
My daughter was so despondent a few years ago, and she said, I'm not even going to go vote. And I said, but she complains all the time. And I said, all right, you
Calling her
cannot.
out.
I know. Where's Megan?
I'll call her out.
I said, you cannot complain about the way things are if you didn't take the time to go vote. So she went and voted. But
There it
she
is.
was like, I'm not even going to waste my time. And I think a lot of people become complacent like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, it is some complacency. It's also the barriers that are put up to make it harder. It's confusing. They close polling locations and things like that. And it's the cycle of life. And so we have to meet people where they are. And when I say we, I'm talking about politicians. People who are seeking to serve the state have to meet folks where they are and have those conversations. We shouldn't expect them to come to us.
We're still voting the way we voted 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Or longer ago, still having to drive somewhere, go in, stand in line and vote, which is just so,
Put a
we
piece
don't
of
do
paper in a
that
box.
anywhere. All right, there are lots of topics important to people: education, crime, equality, infrastructure, job, incarceration, healthcare, families, generational poverty, banking, housing, healthy living, policing, safety, veterans. Which one do you want to talk about?
You pick. All of them are important. All of them are important.
So we talked about your mother being an educator,
Yeah.
and we think we should raise prices on that. We think that they should. We've got $1.6 billion surplus. Let's raise.
And we're losing teachers, and we're not getting new teachers. We're at an increasing rate. Our teacher workforce is decreasing. Meaning,
yes.
we're losing them.
Your wife is a veteran,
She
and
is.
I watched something where you said that there is a surplus of federal money available to Arkansas, and there are 200,000 veterans.
Yeah, there's 200,000 veterans. We only serve
serving.
95,000 of them.
And there's federal money sitting in a
federal money
coffer somewhere
waiting.
that we're not
We're not
using.
taking advantage of.
What?
Yeah.
What kind of money?
Well, so the Department of Veterans Administration, the U.S. Department of the VA, they provide resources and supports to the state. And then the state sends that out to the local areas. And one of the challenges that we have, because I've sat with all of the department heads and talked about the structure of their agency, the budget of the agency, and the issues and challenges and opportunities. And when speaking with the Department of Veterans Administration, one of the things that we talked about was that Arkansas doesn't have enough, it doesn't take much, but doesn't have enough staffing to both pull down the federal resources and get it out to folks.
Oh.
And I asked, what would it take?
Right.
That's the question. Like, if we could serve.
So you've identified the
We
problem.
got the problem.
That's the first step.
That's it. That's that scientific method.
Yep.
Right? And I asked, what would it take to serve all 200,000 Arkansans? A number.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised by what was said.
Oh, please don't tell me. Do tell me.
500,000, $500,000 a year.
And we've got 1.6 billion.
We got 1.6 billion. $500,000 a year, and we could have the structure and infrastructure to meet the needs of all veterans in Arkansas.
And pull
That's
that
an
money
investment worth, and pull the
and pull
the
that
money
federal
necessary
money down there. It doesn't come
for
from
housing,
taxpayers.
for mental health services, for educational services. Like, these are
So
things
why
that we
is
can
that
do.
not being done? I mean, it
You know, you
doesn't
gotta-
take a rocket scientist, which you are, to figure that out.
Yeah, no.
Why is that not being done?
You got to ask somebody else with that one.
How do you get that done? Does it have to go through legislature?
Yeah, anything that's dealing with the purse strings has to go to the legislature. So who you elect as your state rep and state senate matters a lot.
So if you were governor,
Yeah.
you would go in and say, all right, guys, I want $500,000 from the state
Yeah, to serve our veterans
to serve our veterans.
and their families. Yep.
And their families. And then how would you train those people to get to ask for that money from the federal government?
Well, so the structure's already there. They know what to do.
They do.
Yeah, they know what to do.
They're trained already.
They just need additional. That's a scale. It doesn't take a lot of scaling, but for example, you run an awesome blog and an amazing podcast.
Thank you.
So you know how to do it.
Yeah.
If you want to reach 50 million people, the model's there. You just need a few more staff members.
I got
A few more. That's all.
Your wife's a doctor.
Yeah.
What's the biggest problem facing doctors?
Oh my goodness. There's a similar problem with the workforce. That's one.
Every place has got a workforce problem.
For us, and there's doctors, and then there's the system. We are facing a big challenge with hospitals and hospital systems, in our rural areas particularly, because they're at risk of closing. Mm-hmm. And there was a report that came out, and Roby Brock had them on his show. He issued the report. Some of our hospitals are losing tens to hundreds of millions of dollars a year. They're losing it, which they're at risk of closing because of our Medicare reimbursement rates, and the way we are reimbursed doesn't actually meet the need of those hospitals. So you think about a place in, let's say, my mom's hometown of Stevens. They're at risk of losing the local hospital.
How do they change the way they're reimbursed?
Well, that's a delegation of the governor, and our federal delegation has to go to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, I believe. Don't quote me on that part. And really ask for that an adjusted reimbursement rate. So it's possible. Now, my understanding is that Governor Hutchinson is actually working to do that.
Oh, good.
Which is going to help and is needed badly. So here's a story. My mom, who's amazing and I love, 2 years ago, she was here for my daughter's violin concert. And as she was in the parking lot getting there, I saw her face droop and I saw her speech slur. She was actively having a stroke. Actively. Within 5 minutes, she was at UAMS. If she had been in her hometown of Stevens, and she's fine now. She's recovered. She's gone through her rehab. But if she had been in her hometown of Stevens or my dad's hometown of Hughes, she might not be with us today. Why? Because of access to quality health care.
That's a bigger systemic problem too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to invest in those communities so that they support the hospitals that are in them, so that the doctors and the nurses want to keep living there, and
Exactly.
they have enough patients to support the hospital and all that stuff too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, it's big.
But it's solvable.
Oh yeah.
We have the solutions. We just have to have the will to make the investment to solve the problem.
Policing, safety, and veterans. I want to talk a little bit. We've kind of talked about infrastructure and how we just need to be proactive and not know that Diamond City needs a new water system, but we're not going to talk about it till it breaks. We've talked about education. We know teachers need raises. There's 1.6 billion. I can't even believe that. I mean, I must have asked my husband Grady 3 times, is it billion? And he'd say, it's billion.
It's billion.
And then we talk about health care in the rural areas, but there's broadband in the rural areas.
Oh, my goodness, yes. Oh, my goodness.
I'm not sure I care about having broadband out there because my granddaughter just stays on the internet all the time.
But look, you might not, but there's a grandparent out there who needs to access telehealth.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
And they can't, right? There are kids out there who need access to educational opportunities, and they can't get it. There's a small business owner who needs to tap into the global marketplace.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah.
Right? So imagine we talk about flight. Imagine wanting to live in Stamps or Harrison or Clinton, Arkansas, and having a business, but you can't live there because you don't have high-speed internet.
Harrison, Arkansas doesn't have the internet?
Not in the outskirts.
Didn't you go to Harrison,
I
Arkansas?
did,
You
and I
know they
loved it.
hate black people
No,
there.
they don't.
Okay,
That is
good.
Yeah, not Harrison
Yeah.
ever.
Well, I thought they did.
Did I tell you the Harrison story?
No, but I saw it or something. What's the Harrison story?
We're showing up everywhere. So we went to Harrison, and we reserved a room in a restaurant in the back, as we figured we'd get a half a dozen people. So it was a small
You get
room.
shot. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you know,
Will you quit?
Kerry, you
It's
are
a
a
good
mess.
joke. I can't,
Mess. Oh my goodness.
I can't pass up a good joke.
You,
Okay,
need,
go
you need to
ahead.
come around with me. And so we're in Harrison, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's the narrative of Harrison, what you said.
I know
Yeah.
it.
Because
Right.
it was a sundown town and the Klan and everything. That's the narrative. But here's the deal. I walk up to the restaurant, and as I'm walking in, it's packed, and so I'm thinking I'll navigate my way to the back because I want to get to the 6 people that are going to be there to see me in Harrison. Mm-hmm. So there are about 40, 50 people in there.
Oh,
I walk in and got a standing ovation.
how
They
many
were-
people were in there?
All 40 or 50 people were there.
And
to
you
see.
thought there were going to be 6 people there.
I thought there were like 6 people.
You had the same narrative I have.
Look,
You changed your mind.
hey.
That's all. That's
Well, here's the
good.
deal. I
Be open to
I
change.
knew there's knowing and there's experiencing.
That's right.
I knew that folks in Harrison are not about hate and evil. There are some folks that are that way. Don't get me wrong. And there's some folks in every town, everywhere, that are about hate and evil. Mm-hmm. But that's not the majority of the people. Mm-hmm. And so the majority of the folks in Harrison just care about good education. They just care about, good health care. And they care about their neighbors. And they showed up.
That is a good story.
Yeah.
All right. Technology for business and policy.
Yes.
We talked about that.
Broadband.
Policing and safety.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to get young black men to quit shooting each other?
Yeah.
I mean, really and truly. Remember, say McIntosh?
Yeah.
He used to have a section, a corner somewhere in the city where he put up crosses every time a black man died, and it was just awful.
Yeah. And I'm from Pine Bluff, and so having experienced that growing up, and it's rampant now.
Well, you ought to have an insider's view into how to deal with this.
Yeah. And,
I don't.
Well, here's the deal.
Okay.
I think we have to trust the folks that are living it every day, and that are working hard on solutions that actually work. For example, there's someone here, and you'll probably hear some more about it a little bit later. He has a program where he takes ex-felons who used to be on the streets, and they're seeking to do something better now, and he puts them back on the streets. They have their different areas, and they're there to bring people out of that negative cycle, to break that cycle.
Right.
And what do you do? How do you break that cycle? One, you bring more educational opportunities, you bring more economic opportunities, and you show up and actually care. Because right now we're pointing the finger and saying, those folks are bad, those folks are doing wrong, and yet we're not providing educational opportunities, we're not showing up, and we have to do that. So
The
there's
damn
models.
us.
This
The
is the
damn
them
us.
It's the them us, and that is not working.
It's not working. And I think you said it early in the show, exposure.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about expose young people who are starting over again, or even before they even get in
before. You
trouble,
wanna do it before.
expose people to another way to live.
And what we haven't done, we haven't had, there's some conversations that have been had, yes, but we haven't had a real conversation with everyone impacted at the table, meaning families that have lost folks to gun violence, people that have incited gun violence, police officers, community leaders, church leaders, to actually sit around the table. We always have a group of people that say, often, I should say not always, a group of folks that say, I know the solution, so let me put the solution on you all. As opposed to, I believe the people most impacted by decisions need to be at the table when decisions are made. Mm-hmm. So the folks who are likely to be the ones doing the gun violence, bring them to the table. Have a conversation with them, along with the police, along with other safety folks. And let's lift up solutions that work and matter, because most people don't want that.
Who did we have on the show that did that? It was the two people that came on, and he talked about how he goes to gangs, or like self-identified gangs.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And he reaches out to the people that are he described these gangs as family units, and they're protecting each other, and the violence was
They're
just
their own police group.
basically, and the violence was just out of necessity to sort of protect their communities that they identified with. And he could go, as of somebody who had experienced it, he could work with some nonprofit and take time to go to these people on their level and talk to them about what they're doing and why there are better solutions. And
you know what's fascinating about that? And Malcolm Gladwell talks about it in one of his books as well. But what's fascinating about that is that you're taking the time to understand the narrative, right? Because we make decisions based on the narrative we have in our mind about things.
Which comes from the news trying to get us excited about it or something. Fear, usually.
Fear, we got folks out here saying that we have an under-incarceration problem, as opposed to saying that what we have is an undereducation problem. We're not addressing mental health. We're not addressing drug addiction. Those are the things that we're not addressing. But you won't get to that unless you take time to understand the lived experience, to walk in someone else's shoes. When you walk in someone else's shoes, you understand their life, then you make better decisions that impact them.
You identify the problem.
You have to identify the problem.
Mr. Scientist, you've always got to identify the problem.
You got to identify it. But you can't do that if you just, all right, over there. Mm-hmm. And that is the issue. Because we have too many folks that haven't had the lived experience, haven't walked the journey.
So how are you going to get everybody to do that? How are you going to get everybody together in one room? I saw one time, maybe in Chicago, the police talking to the gangbangers, and the police told the gangbangers, said, "We're scared of y'all." Mm-hmm. And they were like, "Y'all are scared of us?" Mm-hmm. And they said, "We're scared of you." Yeah. And I was like, and they both had this aha moment.
Yeah. They did it in Chicago, they've done it in Boston, they did it in South Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The model's there. How do you do it? You just convene people. 9 out of 10 folks, if you ask them to come to the table to help solve a problem, they're going to show up.
So how many people does the governor have that you get to manage personally to execute all these great ideas that you have?
So one of the things that the governor, one of the roles of the governor is appointing boards and commissions. So in addition to the staff, you have to manage the staff. So having managed multiple organizations, kind of understand how to manage staff. There's also the boards and commissions, and that's where a lot of this work is done. Whether you talk about the MLK Commission or the Safety Commission or the Health Commission. So the appointment of folks to these boards and commissions are critical because they can be the ones to do the convenings. So you can have a safety commission that goes out and brings ex-felons and current folks on the streets and police officers and families that have been impacted and healthcare workers and mental health workers. You can convene that table.
So they're like departments.
Yeah. The boards and commissions are kind of like departments.
Yeah, so like I have 7 departments at Arkansas Flag and Banner. So they're and somebody spearheads each one of those departments and comes to you with solutions and problems and feedback, and you
implement it.
And you implement, and you show, and you give, and they bounce it off of you. You use your scientific method to identify the problem, come up with solutions. I love everything about that. So generational poverty.
Yeah.
There's no banks anymore, even in my neighborhood. There used to not be banks in Arlo, Washington. Talked about how, from the People's Trust, talked about how there's no banks in low-income neighborhoods, and because they're scared. I mean, who wants to put a bank up and get robbed, I mean, there's no reason to put a bank there. There's no money in that neighborhood. And I can understand from a business point of view why you wouldn't want to put a bank there. Now the People's Trust Bank is doing it because the Windrock Foundation is helping them. But now banks are even becoming farther and fewer between. Yeah. How do you get people to understand money and how to use money, because it's expensive to not have a bank account and to have to go get your checks cashed at Kroger's.
It is expensive to be poor.
Mm-hmm. It's expensive to be poor. It is expensive
to be, and that's what we fail to realize. It costs a lot, all the charges and everything. Now, I will say a couple things. One, there are models like People's First Bank, like Greenwood Bank, that are out there trying to meet the need. It's also important for us to understand how we got here. And there's a dynamic called redlining. Have you heard of redlining before?
What's that?
So redlining is back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when lenders would literally draw a red line around certain neighborhoods and either say you cannot lend here or the interest rate was much higher there.
High risk.
Well, they called it risk, but the circle was drawn based on race. And it became a high-risk category. So what does that mean? That means investment wasn't made into those areas. And with no investment made in those areas, you fast forward 20, 30 years, 40, 50 years, now you look and you see, well, there are no grocery stores there. There are no banks there. And you say, well, it's because the folks there are X, Y, and Z. Well, maybe it's because during
their parents' generation.
Generation, we didn't make the appropriate investment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we understand the problem, then we can figure out how we move forward with the solution.
I don't know how you're going to solve that. Banks are closing like crazy. They've got more money than God these days, and yet they're closing their branches super fast, it seems like to me. I can't find...
Well, a lot of them, they're closing, but they're also going online. And so that's why you need broadband.
And so, how are you going to do without broadband?
Well, that's why we have to get broadband, high-speed internet, broadband, and cellular to every place across the state, because then that opens up those doors of opportunity.
Mental health, substance abuse. This is something I am really passionate about. As I told you before we even went on, I love alcoholics. I've had like every husband and boyfriend I've ever had. My son's laughing over there. I do.
Are they just attracted to you?
Well, I'm fun and they're fun and I just love them. I mean, but they're very hard to live with. And so... eventually it all culminates into, you've got to grow up and you've got to figure it out. So that becomes a substance abuse problem. Yeah. And you have to say the TV and all the football games are promoting, if you drink beer, you're going to have the best time of your life. Yeah. I mean, it's everywhere these days. So how do somebody that's ready to stop drinking and needs a little bit of help or substance abuse, unless you get busted doing something and the judge sends you to a rehab house, you can't afford to go.
Because we don't have the services. And, to me, that challenge, we're number one in meth use.
We're number one in what?
In meth use, the use of meth.
In number one in what?
In the country.
Arkansas?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
It was either us or West Virginia.
Yeah.
No, that's those pills. West Virginia.
Anyway.
That's the hydrocodone. That's the OxyContin highway over there.
See, you know
in
too
West
much
Virginia.
about this. No wonder.
I watched the documentary. I watched the documentary.
Look, we have our highways here too. I mean, because of our location.
I-40.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the deal, though. One of the things that we have to understand that we do have a problem, and part of the problem is that the services that are needed for folks who are struggling with addiction are not available to them.
At all.
Now, those services can come through the church, they can come through nonprofits, they can also come through our healthcare providers. And you need a combination of that to actually serve the people.
But they can't right now.
They don't exist right now.
So my husband tried to quit drinking for years and years and years. He gets mad. I keep always using him. But anyway, and both of my husbands, my ex-husband and my current husband, both drank and wanted to quit drinking and struggled and finally had to go away. And they could not find a place to go. And luckily, they had a family that could help pay for it.
Here in Arkansas?
No, they had to go to Tennessee.
Both of them went away to another state.
Yeah.
But if they had not had
then it would not.
They'd still be struggling.
And that story is told over and over in communities, and that's what's devastating communities. So if we want to lift up communities and bring them back together, we have to address that problem, which means we have to put providers closer to people. Because right now, your husband and ex-husband, they had to go find it, and they happen to have the resources to be able to do that.
But the money was the big deal. I mean, you can find stuff.
Most folks
don't have money.
That. They don't have it.
Now, Obamacare will pay for it. It's the first, what's it called? Not Obamacare, I always call it that, but it's...
Affordable Care Act.
Thank you. Yeah. It will pay for it if you are a low enough income.
Right. And so that gets to this issue of...
Don't work, because if you work, you can't... If you work, you don't get any social benefits or any...
You lose it. So that's called the cliff effect.
Is that what it's called?
It's called the cliff effect, where if you make just a little bit more in terms of what you bring in, then you lose all of your benefits and your supports. As opposed to a ladder, which says that as you make more income, as you work more, then you can reduce the benefits and services that you get as opposed to eliminating them. So it incentivizes you to actually do it yourself. But if I'm going to fall off a cliff, then no, I'm not. I had people that worked for me when I ran one of the organizations I ran that I was ready to give a raise to, and they had to turn the raise down.
I have
because
to.
if they got the raise, they would lose all of their benefits.
I have to.
See?
I absolutely have had the same thing.
Same thing.
I don't understand why politicians don't talk about that.
Because that's a good question. I don't know why they don't either. It's because that's another one of those things that if you want to get people off of supports and services, then incentivize them. And you're not incentivizing them if you continue to have this cliff to where if I make 25 cents more, I lose all of my benefits.
Right.
That is not right. And I spoke with Chris Hart, who runs Central Maloney in Pine Bluff. He and I talked about that a lot in his workforce and how he's struggling with his workforce because he wants to pay them well.
But he can't.
But he can't. And they work, he said, every day, 20% of his workforce does not show up for work. Why? Because they themselves put themselves on a reduced work schedule. Because if they worked all 5 days, they make too much money and they lose all their benefits. Mm-hmm. All of them. So we talk about this idea of a cliff effect.
How do you change that?
Well, it's policy. Policy can easily change the cliff effect to a ladder.
So is it Arkansas policy?
Or is
it federal policy?
It's both. We can change it at the state level. You're going to need federal changes. However, we can implement state policy that'll make a change.
So let's talk about your campaign. Yeah. You have no money. You don't have any money.
Well, no, that's not true. We don't have Sarah Sanders' money.
Oh my gosh, she has over $6 million.
Yeah.
You have under $1 million.
Yeah.
So what's your strategy here?
Well, look, this is always about having the money to run our race, not her race. This is always about doing the work to meet Arkansans where they are, period. Because at the end of the day, and I've always said this, when you engage an Arkansan and you look them in the eye and you respectfully ask them for their support and tell them why it matters, they'll give you a chance. And I'm seeing it in South Arkansas, I'm seeing it in North Central Arkansas, I'm seeing it all over. So we're putting in the work to engage people directly, and it's making a difference. And at the end of the day, it's about the votes, not the money.
I can't tell you how many people don't vote. Women and black people.
Yep.
They don't vote.
Arkansas is 50th in voter turnout. 50th in the 2020 election. In 2020, we had 3 million people in our state. 1 million Arkansans could have voted but didn't. That's more than everyone who voted in the last gubernatorial election. Mm-hmm. So you are exactly right. We're a non-voting state. So how do you change that? You're not going to change that through the same traditional methods. You change that by meeting people where they are.
It's the complacency.
Well, we talked about that. It's part complacency. It's also part, I'm busy. I'm in my life cycle.
Accessibility.
And so tell me why it matters. Tell me why it's important. You know what we do now? When I stop at a gas station, I go in, I talk to the attendant, and I say, are you registered to vote? A lot of times they say I'm not. And so you know what I do? I pull out a voter registration form, and we get them registered right there.
No.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's proactive.
And why not? So anybody, and because no one's ever asked them. And
What,
then
do
I
you
say,
have a, go ahead.
I'd love to have your vote. 9 times out of 10, they say yes.
But they got to take off work to do it because you can only vote 8 hours a day on one day or something crazy like
We
that.
do early voting now. So.
Yeah.
When does early voting start?
Early voting starts October 24th.
You have to do it downtown only?
There are different voting locations depending on what county you live in.
Yeah.
There are often multiple early voting locations.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And so we're making sure that people know about that. Again, people don't usually talk to gas station attendants and barbers and the like. And these are the folks who aren't showing up to vote, but they could if we asked them.
And you're doing that by your campaign called Walk a Mile.
Walk a mile in your shoes.
How many miles do you walk a day?
It depends on the day. Some days 3, some days 1. And here's the deal, though. We set out a goal to walk a mile in every county. And by the end of our walk, we would have taken 1 million steps And that's one step for every person who could have voted but didn't. But guess what? We've already crossed 2.5 million steps. Because some places we're walking more. Now that's not Chris Jones walking 2.5 million steps. That's all of us collectively. We had 120 people in Springdale walk with us. We had 40 people walk in Jonesboro in 105-degree weather. And one of them was a 91-year-old woman.
Oh.
Right.
She remembers when you couldn't vote, when women couldn't vote.
And that's why she's walking.
Mm-hmm.
But on these walks, the reason it's walk a mile in your shoes, it goes back to what we talked about. There's the narrative we hear, and there's the life people live. Walking a mile in someone's shoes, you get to understand the life they live. They tell stories about their neighborhood. They tell stories about the businesses that were there that are not there anymore. They tell stories about the opportunities that exist in their communities. And the other beautiful thing is they get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're meeting new neighbors together.
So are you telling people to bring a friend when they go to vote?
Bring 22 friends, 22 for 22.
The bumblebee story. You tell it all the time. But actually, I knew that story because I listened to Joel Osteen, and he has told that story.
Told that story. Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry, Greg. Quit looking at me like that.
No, it's not. I'm aware of your Joel Osteen habit, but the bumblebee story I'm not familiar with.
Oh,
I say
no.
that I noticed the pin earlier. So
Oh, tell him, Chris. Tell him.
yeah. Tell me the bumblebee story.
So the bumblebee looks weird.
Yes.
It does.
He looks cute.
It's cute and weird. It has a really big body and really small wings. So as scientists look at it and they say, well, this doesn't make sense. The wings are too small to carry and shoulder its body. So about 90 years ago, scientists at the University of Göttingen, and you can look it up, they said, we're going to figure this thing out. And they ran the calculations, and they determined that it was aerodynamically impossible for the bumblebee to fly.
Oh. And yet.
Somebody forgot to tell the bumblebee.
Yeah.
Because the bumblebee flies anyway.
Yeah. Did they figure out how it works?
Now, about 60 years later, they figured out something that the bumblebee knew all along. When it flaps its wings, and I equate that to our campaign, when you work really hard, when you show up everywhere, when you talk to everyone, when it flaps its wings, there's something underneath the bumblebee that's created. It's a vortex. They didn't factor in the vortex. They didn't factor in that people are ready for change. And it's the vortex that gives the bumblebee lift.
Oh, I love that.
You need to
And my wife was the one who made that connection.
Oh.
See, she gets all the credit for saying,
There she goes again.
This is it.
So you need to add to your story uplifting. Because it's the bee gets up. He's uplifting.
The bee is uplifted.
Like you're uplifting.
Uplift. I like that.
Mm-hmm. So community instead of chaos.
Yes.
That's why people should vote.
Well, that's one of the reasons, because we need community. We don't need chaos, and people are yearning for community.
I think they are. I think everybody's tired of it.
That's why folks showed up. 40 to 50 people showed up in Harrison. We did a walk in Mena, Arkansas. Now, Mena is definitely known as a sundown town.
Mm-hmm.
It is?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, a sundown town, where they had signs in the edge of the town that said if you're black, if you're Jewish, if you're Hispanic, and they didn't use those terms, you do not get caught with the sundown.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? Because the narrative, the story that's told, is often different from the life that's lived. So we did a walk a mile in your shoes in Mena at sundown. And we had about 30 some odd folks with us as the sun went down, and we talked about the significance and importance of a black man coming to Mena and walking at sundown. And we talked about the fact that the life they live is one that wants community and doesn't want that division. They don't want that narrative. And so all across the state, we run across that where people are yearning for community, and we need it now more than ever. That's how we solve those problems.
How are you going to use your education to advance the state of Arkansas?
Well, my education actually helps me to ask questions.
Yeah, scientific approach.
That's it. There are folks that are way smarter than me. There are folks that know more. No, they are. There are folks that know way more than me. And really it's about how do you ask the right questions and how do you bring the right people around the table to get the answer and do the work.
So let's just speak frankly. If you're elected, you'll be the first black man in the mansion.
Yeah.
What does your wife think about that? She's scared to be the first black man family in the mansion. I mean, is that safe?
Why would it not be?
Y'all had to have talked about that?
Why would it not be safe?
I don't know. It just seems like you
Look,
don't
you
seem
talk-
to be
you-
afraid. You
You're
go into
talking
Mena,
to someone with
you go
demeanor.
you go to Mena, you go to Harrison. I'm going into the mansion.
Yeah, like-
you just believe that.
Look, I am a 7th generation Arkansan. My family's been here for over 200 years. There is no soil in Arkansas that I don't feel comfortable stepping on.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Now, I'm not going to get on your private property. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to do that. However, I'm a firm believer that we are here for a reason. And my reason is to give everything I can to lift up Arkansas. That's it. So if that means doing it from the governor's mansion, then so be it.
So, all right, how do you give to your campaign? How do people learn more about you? Where do they go?
They go to chris4governor.com, chrisforgovernor.com. All of our policies are out there and up and available for folks to pick apart and ask questions about and learn. And you can donate from the website right there. You can follow me on social media at Jones4AR, Jones, F-O-R-A-R, on any platform.
Jones for AR.
Yeah, and we engage people too.
ChrisForGovernor.com. So you're leading in social media. Actually, you may not be leading in money, but you are leading in Google searches. You are
Yep.
leading in social media.
Yep.
But I'm sorry, Chris, but those are young people and they don't go vote.
Well, historically.
Historically, they do not go
Right.
vote.
But guess what? There was a time when historically we didn't have a black man as president.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time historically when women couldn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time historically, so it's impossible until it happens.
Yeah.
You feel good about it?
So here's what I feel good about. This is where my faith comes in. I've run the numbers, I've done the math, I see the pathway, and there is a pathway. My job, as according to Scripture, is to plant and water. Some plant, some water, only God brings the increase. That's what the Scriptures say. So my job is to wake up every day and plant a seed or water a seed or do both. And I wake up and I work as hard as I can to do that. And then I go to sleep peacefully because it's all on God from there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's God that'll touch folks' hearts and say, you know what? I may be a Trump voter. I may be a hard Republican. I may have never voted for a Democrat in my life, but I'm going to do something different today. That's God changing people's hearts. And why are they doing it? Because they're ready for something different. They're ready for community. And it'll be folks that say, I've been a Democrat all my life, and I felt beaten down, and I felt ignored, and I can't say it. But now, I'm going to stand up proudly and say it, because we're standing up for community and bringing people together.
Love it. I think that's a good place to end. Chris Jones for governor. I have you a gift.
Oh, I got gifts.
Let me see what Sun Gray packed up for you.
Let's see what we got.
Oh,
Flag.
an Arkansas and a
Yes,
U.S.
I
flag
love
desk
it.
set. Let me
Yeah.
get
I
you a
love it. And you
base.
see I have a pen that has an Arkansas and a U.S. flag
Well, you
on
better.
it.
You're running
Yeah,
for
there you
governor,
go.
so and there's your
Oh, we got a
base.
base too?
Yeah, so that's
for
for
your
your
desk
desk.
set.
Every politician needs a desk set.
Yes, yes.
Did you bring him a whoopee cushion?
I sure did. It should be in that bag.
A whoopee cushion.
Well,
Oh, maybe it's in the other bag.
oh,
there's
okay.
another bag.
We have you a whoopee cushion.
Yay.
That's so funny.
That my daughters will love.
That's exactly why I told Grady to put it in there, because it says no Putin and it has a picture of Putin's face.
They're going to love it.
They will love it.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much. You're the
You
best.
are, oh, thanks. You're the best, too. All right. In closing, thank you again, Chris, for coming on. In closing, to our listeners, thank you for spending time with us. We hope you've heard or learned something that's been inspiring or enlightening, and whatever it is will help you up your business, your independence, or your life. I'm Kerry McCoy, and I'll see you next time on Up in Your Business. Until then, be brave and keep it up.
If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the picture of Kerry's face in the center of the screen. For more of Kerry's interviews, click either video on the right of the screen. And as always, thank you for watching.